Looking forward to a discussion with you about urban infrastructures and how we interact with them. Now, Dietmar and I have been working about how cities, technology, data, and people interact with each other for a long time, presenting here at Ars Electronica since 2011. And thank you, Michael, for inviting us, and also thank you, Ars Electronica, for making the city our topic, your main topic this year. So we will talk today about our Manila project that we've been working on. It's my new hometown, so I'm really attached to it. But before we go there, why don't you join me and come with me? So the questions that we are always looking into is urban infrastructure and people. What does the urban infrastructure know about the people? What do people know about the infrastructure they are interacting with? And how do they interact with each other? Is there knowledge? What assumptions are there? And what do we expect from there? But before we go to Manila, as I said, my new hometown, come with me to Vietnam, to Ho Chi Minh City. So picture Vietnam, picture Ho Chi Minh City, and a street crossing there, one of many, where in the middle of the traffic flow, there's a policeman standing there trying to stem the traffic in one direction, but also making it flow in the other direction. Many of those policemen stand on different crossings in Ho Chi Minh City and try to figure out the network flow, try to figure out how to make an urban infrastructure that interacts daily with its people, the traffic system, work. Now, it doesn't work very well because those people on each individual crossing don't know much about each other. And so, therefore, the traffic doesn't flow quite as it should. Now, in come a world-leading technology company, a smart city company, hand in hand with a development agency who provides funny money. So they go there and approach the government of Ho Chi Minh City and talk to them and say, you know, guys, we're going to help you. We're going to help you with time-tested technology. What we're going to do is we put sensors on the ground. We put traffic lights and signals on every street and corner. We link everything together, and out of this, the sensors will know where the traffic will flow, where the people will go. The signals will react to it. You will have economic flow. You will have transport flow. You will have growth. You will have what you expect and want in your city. So it's done. They come in, they dig up the streets. It's horrendous for a few months in summer in Vietnam. They put in the sensors, the traffic signals, and then there's one day when they flip the switch, and this is what happens. Complete and utter chaos. Why? Well, these very clever people didn't know which questions to ask each other and the infrastructure. So these sensors they put in, they count cars, full heavy metal cars. This is what they need to count. And the algorithms also think that there is cars going over. But if you have ever been to Vietnam, Vietnam doesn't run on cars. And it will not for a long time. It's scooters. It's millions of scooters that go over there. So this is what happens if you do not know about the cultural infrastructure or the infrastructure and the culture and how to interact with it. Culture eats technology for breakfast. Why is this important? And why is it so close to my heart? So I work at two specific places. 3 months a year, I spend at the MIT Media Lab thinking about the future of the future and how we can use flexible, adaptive technology to subconsciously influence how you move around the city. But 9 months a year, I live and work in Asia for the Asian Development Bank. We spend $20 billion a year to build better infrastructures for poor people in Asia. This is what we're doing. But to do this, to develop those projects, we need to know what the people need, what they want. And we need to understand it for different cultures and different countries on a very local but also national level. As I've just shown you, it's not the same everywhere. Vietnam is different to Laos, where I just had a big project in Vientiane. It's different to Pakistan, and if you have ever tried to work in Pakistan, you know how very much happy you are to have technology like satellite technology and analysis, because wherever we have to build new transport networks, we cannot always go there, and we cannot move around freely and find out what people want in their infrastructures, because I'm freaking everyone. Wherever I go, I have 2 people guarding myself with a rifle. So this is difficult, and this is why we need technology, and this is what we're working on, how to implement it and how to understand it. But it's always important to understand, what do we need to know from top down about urban infrastructures and systems to make it work for a whole city? But what do we also need from bottom up? What do we need to know about how local people appropriate the infrastructure, how they interface with it, how they use it, so that we can go and build in better interventions that are accepted by the local culture, like Gita said this morning, but that actually also work on a larger scale. We cannot only think about those poor areas as beautiful little villages that we should keep as they are. They stink, they smell, they are unhealthy. So we have to go and interact there. Now let's go back to Manila. To right of my neighborhood, this is right around next to my house where we did the project this year. We tried to figure out what and how can we get ideas about an urban infrastructure quickly to assess, and about a local interaction and culture quickly to assess and understand, so that we can make in the future better projects that really address the people's needs. And Dietmar is going to present our current status of the work.
Thank you, Katja. Yeah, so this last slide that you see here, in a way, was taken in the city hall in Manila. It's right at the entrance, and it, in a way, is a kind of a funny example of how things work. You have 90% of the letters there, so it's good enough. Everyone knows what is meant, and the effort counts. So a quick question. What was the last time when you contemplated the shape of a street lamp? If you travel to Manila, it is very likely that you will do that. Because the city has a pretty amazing variety of different colorful lamps in all kind of different places, not just the touristy spots, but you have this kind of different shapes and colors, and they're all next to each other. There is no common shape, and you have this mass of old wires. So you ask yourself, why is this the case? So how did this urban environment take shape? Because this is not really how we typically understand infrastructure, as this neutral, ubiquitous, invisible system that we base our life on. Now, the easy answer, what also in the Philippines many would say, is that, well, it's all corruption. A mayor will, has a favorite company and will pay them to put up these particular street lamps that are much more expensive than they would actually need to. And maybe there's a grain of truth to it, but mostly I would say this is not the case. And we should give those local governments much more credit. They are dealing with a very difficult situation, and they are very competent and very ambitious about that. So the city is changing at an amazing rate since the Second World War, when it was pretty much flat. And urban planners are just one actor in this whole system. So they have to pretty much plan ad hoc, make decisions very quickly, because there are no 30-year plans of how things get implemented. And so we think this level of improvisation is something that we also see on the side of the users. Yeah, so some of these lamps were broken, and they were fixed by individual users, by people who live there in the environment. And you have all kinds of different social practices. So when we talk about infrastructure, we actually talk about a cultural and social dimension, not a technical dimension. And another thing I want to point out, we are not talking here about the informal city, about squatter environments. Those are all very formal environments. So there are mayors, there are council members that are elected by the residents, and they're trying to figure things out. But at the same time, they are working together with the constituents in a very informal way. So this is one of the chairman. He also has this nice shirt that says chairman. Who is in a central barangay of the city, which is a small district. And he's at this point explaining how they managed to get the light for their grotto with the Holy Mary inside. That is a very important gathering spot for the local community in these kind of very scarce public spaces that they have. And you see that it's not like you would expect that the city installs lamps and then the city fixes it when it's broken. But this happens in a constant dialogue with the users. Sometimes you run into an issue where, for example, there's no light in a particular corner and they have to talk with one of those residents there whether they could provide something. And sometimes you have this other case where a very poor family who basically has to pay, cannot afford to pay for the electricity because the rent is twice as high as the other way around. The electricity bill is twice as high as the rent. So they get connected officially through the city to the street lighting system, so they have a little bit of electricity. And also all these kind of I don't know if this, this is also another, I'm sorry, this is a little bit difficult with the, so what we see here, for example, is the main switch that turns on the street light in the whole district. And there are all these kind of ways of dealing with that. We have cases where neighbors sublease, in this case, electricity to those street vendors. So we see a cable on top of their booth coming from the neighboring parcel, and they have to pay 70 pesos per night to get the electricity. And well, it's necessary for them to sell their goods, but then other people use different methods. And there in this particular barangay is also a formally informal squatter area. And this is the only entrance that we see here. So if you want to reach this district, you have to go through this very narrow alley. And this was a place where in the past 5 years there were a lot of fires and very dangerous situations because people were just stealing electricity. And when you just attach wires, then at some point the transformer explodes and you have a fire. Or there are also very gruesome scenes on YouTube of electricity thieves who underestimate what electricity does to your body. And so it's a very dangerous situation. But at the same time, those are his constituents, and they are working together, and it's actually a pretty tight knit community. So it's very important to solve these things together. And you see, this is just an illustration. So it goes on and on and on. You go very deep into this neighborhood, and sometimes you have to squeeze yourself through some very dark corners, and at some point there's another. And at some point you arrive on the other end, which is a dead-end street. But which already officially is part of the next district, but is still serviced by the other district. So this improvisation by the users has, of course, prompted the electricity company to do something against this. So what they came up with is they installed a special type of wire, this orange wire, that is apparently tamper-proof, so if you try to connect something illegally, the whole system, the cable basically no longer works. But that's not enough. They also removed the meters from the individual houses and put them on a very high pole that is right at the entrance of the whole district. So it's high up, so people cannot climb up and reach those meters to attach their own wires. So the electricity company has to go there with binoculars to read those. So it's a kind of interesting dialogue that happens, which is also a kind of improvisation on the side of the electricity company. So here we see a couple of these glimpses into this orange wire, how it's distributed. And now we see those poles where all those wires, all those meters are connected, which you have to read through the binoculars. And of course, what is created through this is, because we have these very visible poles, it becomes a sign. People immediately know this is a poor neighborhood where people used to steal electricity. And that's not the only case. So infrastructure is a really powerful communication medium, especially in a city like Manila. If you see these situations very often where you have right next to a lamp or to a sewer system or something, a political advertisement, which in a way is a promise. So you see, or the local candidate would say, if you elect me, you will get those beautiful lamps, you will get this beautiful sewer system and drainage system, and you will get maintenance that works for that. But it stays on a very symbolic level, because you cannot do this for the whole city. So you have all those kind of statements of infrastructure, communication, semiotics all over the city that in a way function as a promise to the constituents. And I think this semiotic quality of infrastructure is a very underappreciated element when we think about urban systems. We have to also consider those cultural and social implications, that infrastructure is a process, not a thing. Thank you very much.